Just for a better understanding of my surroundings, I'm from Kentucky. Lots of wooded area and people love their guns, including me. I used to not believe that there was unknown stuff in the woods. I thought maybe Bigfoot could be real, but I severely doubted it. After this happened, it sort of opened my eyes to how many unknown creatures could be out there. I had just bought my first rifle and a 60-round drum magazine for it. Reading up on the drum, I read they were amazing and rarely had any issues at all. This is important for later. A few days after I got it, I finally decided to take it out for a test drive and sight in my gun a little better. Here's where everything went wrong. As I said, Kentucky is super wooded. 3/4 of the land I lived on was just thick woods. There was a main path for driving our gator, and a few small paths our cows had made in the woods. I decided to walk along our creek that had a small path half cleared out. At the end of the path is a big field our cows graze in, and where I sight in guns when they aren't there. As soon as I crossed the fence to go to the field, I instantly felt like I was being watched closely. I brushed it off because I've walked back there 1,000 times before and never been bothered by anything. So, I keep walking and try to ignore the feeling of being watched, but at the same time, I'm very aware of it. I was trying not to give it any noticeable attention. The walk to the field along the creek is very short, maybe 2 minutes at a slow pace. The further I walked, the more intense the feeling got, like I was getting closer to whatever was watching me. About halfway there, the feeling got so intense I could not ignore it anymore. The drum magazine I had with me was unloaded, so I stopped and started loading it. I only brought 20 rounds with me because I was just going out to sight in my gun, and 20 should have been plenty. Now I'm stopped, paying extremely close attention to what's going on around me while loading my magazine. The exact moment I started putting rounds in the drum, I smelled something dead. Like it had been dead for a while and rotting in the sun. I started looking around, and right behind me was what was left of a possum. It was torn to pieces. It was almost like it was placed there for me to find. The only thing was it looked like it had been dead maybe a day at most, and what I was smelling seemed like it was far more decomposed. This obviously didn't sit well with me, so I double-timed it on the magazine loading. I guess I should have taken the dead possum as a warning and turned around. But I decided to keep going. I've never had any problems back there before, so I assumed I was just being paranoid. I was almost to the field when I saw it. It was at the end of the creek, and the nagging feeling of being watched was unbearable. Just as I was near the edge of the woods, I heard a splash in the water. I immediately turned toward the noise, gun ready, but no round in the chamber. Walking down the creek, away from me, was something I will never forget. At least 8 feet tall, probably taller, very skinny. Imagine a grown man that weighs 120 pounds. Now stretch him out to be 8 feet tall, but his body width stays the same. Very long arms, and it walked on 2 legs. Skin stretched tightly across its body. It made no noise while it walked. It was a light brown color, almost like the color of a deer. That's all I can remember about it. Now I know why I felt like I was being watched. Magazine loaded, bolt ready to send a round in the chamber. Remember what I said about the magazine being extremely reliable? I pressed the bolt release on the gun to chamber a round just in case this monstrous thing decides to attack. The round gets stuck somehow and doesn't even budge out of the magazine. I had never used that magazine before, so it didn't fail from heavy use. Luckily, the thing just walks off and that was that. I told a friend about this and he said it sounded like I encountered a wendigo. Everything I described matches them near perfectly, from them being thin and tall, the stench of death and its color. The only thing that didn't quite add up is its behavior. Why am I still alive? Wendigos are supposed to be incredibly aggressive. Aside from watching me, it did nothing. It didn't try to attack or confront me. It just walked away. This being said, I've never had another encounter with it. I've gone to the same field, taking the same path, expecting to be watched, and have not gotten the feeling of being watched as strongly as that day. Something was out there, and you can't convince me otherwise. I've tried to trick myself into thinking I'm being watched out there, and it still had no comparison to that day. My entire childhood, my father and I used to take late-night walks due to his insomnia from shift work. Our neighborhood is considered very safe and mostly urban, besides one of the roads towards the back of the neighborhood being lined with thick forest. All of these walks are very dear memories of mine, except one, which ended being the last. Along the road with the tree line, there was a single streetlight to illuminate a small plot of land that someone owned. It was very overgrown and ill-kept. We commonly walked this road to enjoy the sounds of the forest, the lack of illumination, and the ease of circling back. One ordinary night, as we're walking and making conversation, my father abruptly stops, pulls me close, puts a hand over my mouth, crouches with me, and points towards the single illuminated plot roughly 100 yards away. At first, I didn't see anything and thought he was pulling my leg, but just as I began to protest his grasp, I see a very small, humanoid figure, roughly 3 feet in height, scrawny, and with long limbs. It materialized out of the plot's bushline and cautiously took in its surroundings before signaling forward. After a few seconds, 2 other small humanoid figures emerged as well. After a brief moment of what looked like a discussion, all 3 made a dash for the forest tree line. Once this happened, my father picked me up, threw me over his shoulder, and made a break for our home, which was roughly half a mile back. Mind you, my father is 6'5", 220 pounds, and I was roughly 120 pounds at this time, and he never showed signals of slowing down due to his fear and adrenaline. After this night, we never took late-night walks. He installed 4 bright motion detection lights around our acre plot and brought home a dog. The few times I've tried to bring it up, he doesn't want to discuss it, and made it clear he never wants to either. This happened to my son when he was 17 years old. We lived in New Mexico at the time. My son, Cody, was riding along with his friends Drew and Alex, with Drew being the driver. It was night and they were heading to Drew's house. He lived out in the country, so the road they were on was isolated and surrounded by desert. In fact, that whole area is flat and mostly dirt. As they're driving along, they see a man standing in the middle of the road. Drew slows down, and they all expect the guy to move off to the side. He doesn't move and just stands there. Drew slows to a stop. The guy is standing just outside of the illumination from the headlights. He's wearing jeans and some sort of long-sleeved shirt. They couldn't make out the features of his face, but they could tell he was facing them. Nobody moves for a few seconds. The kids start to talk about going around him, but aren't sure if they should pass by this guy or turn around and go another way. Suddenly, he drops to all 4s and starts running towards the truck. All the kids start screaming. Drew slams the truck into reverse and floors it. Now, they're going backwards on this dark country road, and this guy is chasing them on all fours, and he's keeping up with the truck. Drew goes faster, and finally, the guy drops out of sight. Drew turns the truck around, and they all came back to our house. I was in the living room when they came running in, slammed and locked the door, and went tearing up the stairs to Cody's room. I went up to see what was going on, and this is when they told me the story. I've never seen them so pale and frightened. They were completely freaked out. This happened on a Friday night around 8 p.m. These were kids that normally would rather be anywhere except home on a weekend. That weekend, they stayed at our place the whole time. They didn't go out at all, and they only left because they had school on Monday. It took a month before they wanted to go out again at night. After a little research, they all agreed that it was a skinwalker. Even to this day, if I bring it up, Cody and his friends will get really quiet and look scared. It took a long time for them to get past it, and they still think that talking about it will make it come back. Thank you so much for listening to these stories. Darkness and mystery is pretty much what this channel is all about, so if that's your cup of tea, then please click that subscribe button gently and turn on all notifications. We'll see each other in the next video, so stay spooky. And goodbye, Darklings.